the stuff that I'm going to list off in the next few slides are from the talk that the Android developers put out, What's New in Android. So it's more so when we do the discussion, people can look back if they want and see some of the things to refresh their memory. So kind of goes in the same order he does, but then I bring up some other things that I found and that I've done to kind of learn some new things. So, so if you haven't already watched this video, it's 32 minutes. It's got a lot of good information, and it gives you a brief view of what each of these things are. So, and he starts with UI, and he talks about the window insets, and he doesn't really talk about all the changes. He just mentions that there are a lot of changes, and that part of the reason that they finally got around to doing these changes is so that they could have the IME animations function the way they wanted them to. And one of the great things with the IME animations, he shows a video in there, but then at the end, I'm going to show you where you can go to get the, to see how some sample code and see how they've implemented it, and you can see a little bit about what it shows. So, but I'll have that at the end. And then conversations, which I didn't realize until I was studying conversations and bubbles, that back in Oreo, people notifications took a priority over other. I didn't realize there was a hierarchy for notifications, and so that was kind of cool to learn about. But conversations he talked about, and then spent quite a bit of time on bubbles, since bubbles is, even though it was in the developer stuff with Android 10, it's now ready for more broad use and actually being released now. So in the Android 11 beta. And then privacy, he went through several different things within privacy, like the data access auditing, one-time permissions, background locations, foreground services, and package visibility restrictions, scope storage, and auto resetting permissions. So, and they have other videos that go into more detail for a lot of these things on their YouTube page, which I include at the end, how to get to that if you don't know how to. And then developer goodies. I laughed when he talked about the Wi-Fi debugging, because it's true, there's never enough USB ports. Nullability annotations and how they've included recent nullability and recent non-nullability. Crash reasons reporting, where it gives more specific reasons why it's crashing, and for those devices that you are out actually being used by people and you can't see the specific thing of why it's crashing, whether it's they don't have enough memory or if something else is getting in the way. So, and then GWP ASAN, the ADB incremental. So if you haven't watched the video, he goes more into those, but like I said, I'm kind of trying to just refresh people's memory who have seen it, or just give a little so when we do the discussion, it's more to get people ready for discussion. Graphics and media, he talked about the NDK image decoders and the animated HEIF files. He talked about how the NDK OpenSL is now deprecated, and they want you using OBO, which came, or which has been you have been able to use OBO prior to this, but now it's the preferred. The variable refresh rate, because there's devices out there that can now have a faster refresh rate, and we need to keep up with that. The neural network API, the 5G and autofill and keyboard integration. And then he talked about the non-platforms and using Jetpack, all the updates to the Jetpack libraries, Jetpack Compose and the updates they're putting out, and Android Studio, and the updates that came with 4.0 and 4.1 and 4.2. So, and Google Play and how Google Play is changing some of their things. So there was so much information there. There was a lot to digest, a lot to see, and it was a bit overwhelming for me. So, but they did introduce that they're doing this 11 weeks of Android. And I put down here, you can get to the 11 weeks of Android page here. If you want to do the pathways, which I highly recommend if you want something that helps walk you through each of these and helps you understand in an incremental, easy to understand way, is going through the pathways. So I did the week 1 pathways, and it had a lot of good information. Some of it was things that he had mentioned in the What's New in Android, but it also had some other things that hadn't been in there for sign-in and security that way. And one of the things he talked about was one tap, and you get a chance to see how they want you using that, if you want to use that as an option for sign-in for them, and how it has end-to-end encryption, and they use a token for your user, and then when the user changes phones, they can use Blockstore, and Blockstore was specifically set up for when, like, they're changing devices, or you need to be able to get that. They need to be able to get that information, and then it'll use that token to help them transfer that information, so that they don't have to make it an easier transition from their old phone to their new phone with your app, and not having to sign in and everything. And they're having Blockstore and OneTap are the part of their new GIS, Google Identity Services, and they're using that to replace Google Sign-In and Smart Lock. So the 11 weeks of Android, they use a combination of videos, articles, and now I can't remember the name of them, code labs for you to learn the information. So week 1, it was more videos and just one code lab, and then at the end they have a quiz for each week, so you can earn a badge, and you just do week by week, and you can earn all the badges if you want to, or you can just do ones that apply to things that you want to learn. But I found the code lab to be extremely helpful. It walked me through how to set up the shortcut for the conversations, and then it walked me through how to set up the bubble. And they have code that you clone on GitHub, and then they have to-dos within the code, and they walk you through how to make those changes so that you can learn how to do it, and then you can take that and what you've learned there and implement it into your project. So I thought 11 weeks of Android was incredibly helpful, and I went through the pathways route. You can just watch the videos, because they do link just the videos below, and they have things you can read. But I thought having it included in a package and walking me step by step was incredibly helpful. So the resources that I found from Google and Google developers, of course, their website, developer.android.com, and then Android 11 will take you right to all the Android 11 stuff. Their YouTube channel has all the videos, and it has them separated. So like you can look at the launch videos, you can look at the ones that go with 11 weeks of Android. You know, they have the different, they have different sub-channels within their channel so that you can use that to find the videos that you want. There's also podcasts that you can listen to on specific things. I know Android Developers Backstage did one on Bubbles, and I believe they've come out with some other ones. And then Now in Android is another one that has some good information from a Google employee. And as far as the UI stuff, there's this GitHub where they have samples that you can look and see how it's been used. And that's one of the ones that, that's where I found the one for the window insets. And let me see if I can cast that so you can see it. So this one has the animation so you can go and look at how they do things. And right here, it'll show you the old way, or the current way that we have with the keyboard coming up for the IME animation, and then, or the old way, and this is the new way with IME animations, where it just glides nicely up. But it's nice that it has that. So anyway, we want to hear from you guys what you guys have found as you've played with it. At some point, if anybody wants to see what the Code Lab produces, I have that on my computer and I can share that. But we want to hear what you guys have been doing with it and with Android 11, if you've tried it out, what things you've learned, what things you've enjoyed. So I'm going to stop presenting and let everyone chat.
Yeah, I saw that Trudy, she put the updated link for the user interface samples. It was just missing the Android portion.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good find. Thanks for that.
Yeah. And thank you for fixing it.
Sure.
Who do we have on the call right now? We have Sushil, Michael, Jordan,
And Trudy.
and Trudy. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the Wi-Fi debugging. That's one that I've wanted to see improvements with. I haven't done a whole lot yet with it for Android 11, but that's one that I'm pretty excited about.
Have you done any Wi-Fi or any work on like Android TV?
No, I do a lot of Bluetooth development right now, but not Android TV.
Yeah, so they introduced Wi-Fi debugging back, I want to say clear back at Android 19, KitKat. It's just really, really slow. I think they've done some speed up improvements in 11, but it's a fun one to do. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, I remember they had something.
I've always been irritated by the fact that it doesn't work offline.
I remember they had something before, but it never really worked well. I remember trying it out, and it just was hard to set up. Didn't work well. So.
Yeah. Do you have to start it, Jordan, with a connected device? I mean, do you have to start with the cable and then you can detach?
No. So once you get, actually, yeah, you did have to start with it connected. And then you enabled it with ADB, and then once that was enabled, you could connect to it directly. But what they've done now is a lot simpler. It's a lot easier to use.
Aren't they setting it up with like a code or a QR code or something?
That's what I saw.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, that's the new feature, I think.
So Jennifer, you said you played with OneTap. Is it just using like the normal Google sign-in on the back end of it?
I haven't actually played much with it. They just talked about it a little bit in it. So I learned about what it was, but I haven't played with it yet because I've been nervous.
There's so much to look at.
That's what I like about the Code Lab is because it feels safer having it all worked out in a system, and you just follow their steps, and you don't have to jump in. You know, it's like dipping your toe in instead of full on jumping into the pool. So I haven't yet, but I did take a lot of notes when I was reading about it, and it sounds like it, but I do think it is going to be, it makes sense for it to be more in back end, but I haven't looked a whole lot at it. Just playing with it. I'm trying to look through my notes and see if they mentioned it, but
So that wasn't part of the Code Lab then?
no, the Code Lab was all about the bubbles.
Darn it.
UI, nice.
So which was exciting to see it, but yeah.
One that I'm hopeful for is the insets. Back in Ancestry, we had to do this stuff with insets for that full screen pedigree view, and Matt Bishop and I we spent about 100 hours on it. It was such a pain to work with, and oh yeah, it was just awful. But yeah, hopefully they're making that a lot simpler.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Jordan.
Jordan put up.
He put up the link.
So OneTap is backed by Google. It's protected by their Google account. So basically what OneTap gives you is it gives you, it does through the Google sign-in to authenticate the user, and then it gives you a token. And you can use that token from then on to identify your user going through. And yeah. If you're using Google Sign-In, I think it's great. But if you're using something else, they need to add more.
They made it sound like you could use like anything that used password autofill. I was looking at it a little bit.
Yeah, that is how I agree. That's how they made it sound. They made it
But it's unclear how that works. So yeah, it says if they've saved their password with Google using Android autofill, Smart Lock for passwords, or Chrome on any platform.
Yeah.
So Android autofill, I hope, would be something like a password manager would do it, but who knows?
Yeah, so autofill's cool. It's really not that hard to implement to be able to use autofill in your app. But if you're using like a OAuth-based system where you don't hold on to the credentials, you just kind of throw them away, you don't save them after that point, autofill doesn't really meet your needs, in my opinion. So.
So anything else anyone's played with or is excited about learning about, or?
Yeah, they're not necessarily related to Android 11. So I'm wondering if I can still talk about them.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead, Sushil.
Okay, so I saw this new Jetpack library called App Startup, and apparently it provides a performant way to initialize components during startup, like in the application where you like initialize third-party SDKs, like your Login or Firebase or whatnot. They can potentially slow down the startup, like maybe not like at a noticeable level, but if it's a big app, and if there's tons of things going on, then every like couple hundred milliseconds will matter. So I just came across this App Startup library, but it says that it uses content providers, and basically what it does, from just from reading, it says that it optimizes the initialization of SDKs. So I was wondering if anyone already tried it and saw any improvements, or.
I haven't tried it. I remember that was a big issue for Snapchat, because all the teams trying to do the initialization at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have a link for that, Sushil, that you can paste in the chat?
Yeah.
Be interesting to follow up and look into.
Yeah.
So I haven't tried it yet, but I really want to. It's really cool to see all the things they're doing with that. Be fun to play around with it once I can get to it.
Yeah, and then I also had another question. So maybe it could lead into a discussion if that's okay to bring up. At Ancestry, we're now tracking performance of our apps. So we're tracking app startup time and also like tracking the screen loading times for like screens that we think are critical, like business critical. So for that, you know, we just start like a timer instance in the applications on create class. And then when the user lands on the screen, we just stop that timer. Obviously, we also stop it, like if something happens in the in the process, and if the app is backgrounded or whatnot. And then we use a bunch of logging frameworks. We use Mixpanel, New Relic, and a few others. So I was wondering if there are any like best practices for this kind of stuff. If there's a certain way to measure performance. I did some research, and I don't think there's like a like this process of measuring performance for mobile is like defined. I think, but from my research, I'm thinking that this is still, like people are trying to still figure out what the best way to do this is. So I was wondering if people have any good insights or how they would measure performance. I think Jordan has a comment.
Have you looked at Firebase performance?
Yeah, we have Firebase performance.
Yeah, so that's where I get my performance for my screen views and things like that. It really solves that problem for me.
So do you use like custom traces or?
I haven't added any in there because I haven't needed to, but it's easy enough to do that it would give me what I want to elevate certain screens. Yeah.
So
I mainly use the Firebase performance monitoring for my network calls. That's the one that I really focus on. But you also get the thing because they do it for the app startup and they do it for certain screens as well. And so adding in some custom traces wouldn't really take that much.
Do they provide insights for certain screens? How would that work?
So basically, a custom trace is what you'd want to use for your certain screens, but they do provide you your initial. Sorry, I'm pulling it up here because I want to see it myself. I remember they do it for app startup and a couple other things, just by default.
Mm-hmm.
So they have renderings for each screen. So they have keep track of your renderings, your slow rendering, your frozen frames.
Yeah. What if you want to monitor? If you want to track how long it took for a screen to load, like the content for a screen to load.
Oh, so like getting your content from your database to your app,
or from anywhere, like
or from the network.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just recommend running a custom trace at that point.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
But that's the one I found, and I found it to be really useful. I mean, I get the network stuff. I actually can tell all my network things because usually when I'm dealing with data like that, the network's the slowest part of the app. And so just having the network traces by themselves give me a lot of insight. And then running from the database to the app, that's the other one I usually track, is my database queries. But I use, I just optimize the heck out of my queries.
So would tracing give you information about like the actual time it would take to load?
Yeah, it should give you the time.
Okay, because right now, like we have our own implementation of it, which like I said, we start the timer by creating a timer object and all that, and it's just hard sometimes to cover exceptions, and that's when you can get like corrupt data if the timer doesn't stop or something like that.
Yeah, so so there's really cool because there's an annotation you can add for your traces that will they'll actually do some bytecode manipulation to get that trace in place, and it will measure that method call on how long the method call takes.
Yeah.
Which
But will it do that only for like when you're developing, like local testing, or will it do that in production in the field for when the customers are using?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Like I said, I get full data. Well, not full data, but I get all their default data coming through, and any custom traces I wanted to add, I could add, and I would get that in the dashboard. So.
Cool. Great. Thank you.
So, Sushil,
Yeah.
are you trying to separate your data that's development versus production, or do you don't care if it's all mixed together?
Oh yeah, we're looking for how our customers are experiencing the app. We're looking for that data. Yeah. Just because we have like really good phones here when we're developing, good Wi-Fi and all that, so it wouldn't make sense.
Where your biggest slowdown is, it's syncing all the whole tree every time you start the app.
Yeah, Andrew worked on creating a new tree downloader, so it's a lot better now.
Yeah, I remember with my tree, it would take like a minute to do that. Yeah, good luck with that. Maybe you can try some things out and get back to us on how you did. So we don't have to look at the same thing we did. I think
go ahead.
It's interesting with Android 11 though, and this is continually they're trying to get better with this privacy. So you have very broad permissions, and they've narrowed down, and you have to know people at Google to get the phone permissions now, and I actually like how they went through and said, okay, this app is getting your location. You want it never get your location, only while it's turned on, or always. I really like how they did that. And I think they're going to do more stuff like that with some of the privacy stuff. Like it seemed like they were doing stuff
one-time permissions.
Yeah, they're doing the one-time permission.
Yeah, and I think they actually, for the location, they made it so you just can't access it in the background pretty much.
Yeah, it's harder to. Yeah, but scope storage sounds, because I think you had a lot of access to things on the phone before that were bad, by too much. Actually, it's interesting. I saw Facebook doing the same thing. It's like you used to be able to get friends of friends of friends of friends, back when it was new. And yeah, so they learn more. They're definitely trying to do some more of this stuff. So I'll spend some time on some of these privacy things. I think they have a big impact. And hopefully people are using these things in a nice way, but I know a lot of apps are not using these things. I thought they were talking, I think DroidCon last year, they were talking about how people would actually use photos to see get your location, and find a recent photo and figure out where you were, because they couldn't have GPS permissions. And it's like, come on, guys.
They also wanted to call out that Jordan has written a new Medium article. I know maybe you've written some in the past, but I read his articles on Hilt.
Yeah.
That looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, Hilt looks cool.
Awesome.
I really wish my app was not in a state it is in, of half Scala, half Kotlin, because it makes it kind of hard to use things like that.
Actually, we actually did it on our own personal app over the weekend. Just spent it took like an hour.
I can't use annotations in Scala is the problem.
Oh, you can't. Well, you don't have to put it everywhere.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's the thing. Is you don't. That's what I really liked. Of course, I'd already done it. I work with Jordan, so do it on one of the apps of the church, and that took several days. But my app was a bit simpler, I think.
Oh yeah, because you did Jeff's fragment injection.
No, actually, I didn't. There was
an
injection before. It was on the SNI app. There wasn't.
Oh, yeah, that app just.
So it's a little easier. But there was just a lot of places to change things, and then we ran into. So the problem with Hilt is if you have a view model, and there's a base class you're inheriting from, but also has a view model. That's when you run into trouble, and that was where, yeah, we ended up with some difficulty. It took a lot longer with that, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward other than that.
So what's the trick to that situation?
Use Alpha 2. They fixed that bug.
Oh, they fixed the bug. Okay. That's why alpha software is alpha software.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say though, like there's so many benefits of using the alphas.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, if you test it, if you really do your due diligence testing, it's totally fine to release with alphas. So,
Anyway. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll go for it.
Is Kotlin Flow in beta now? Where is it?
I think
So
Flow
Kotlin
is stable, isn't it?
For the most part, there's a few operations and a few things that are experimental, but for the most part, it's stable.
Really? Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I still haven't used it though.
Oh, it is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That in store is pretty good too.
I know coroutines are awesome on the whole. I've just loved all the things you can do with them.
Yeah, store is pretty interesting too.
So what's store?
Library. Have you used that, John, already?
Yeah, it was
I've
done by
already read into it.
Times, and now it's done by Dropbox. But it makes it a lot easier. You basically create a store and you say, okay, go and give me the data, and then so it goes first to the database to get there, and then it goes to the network and gets it. And once it gets it to the network, it writes it to the database and updates it. So it just handles all of that interaction for you. So it's just a lot simpler.
Yeah,
database cache mechanism, right?
Yep. Or even disk cache. You can choose if it's going to be in-memory cache or disk cache or database cache, and it'll also handle like in-flight debounce. So if you're making the same call, I think within 1 minute of making the previous call, it'll just get you the cache results first, and that kind of stuff. So basically, a lot of customization for your caching.
Sounds like Sushil's got our next month's presentation lined up. That's cool.
I haven't used the new store. I've used the New York Times one, but the new one is the one. It's written in coroutines and all that. It's in beta, which means our architect. Generally, we don't have we have the rule to not use in production code, but.
Oh, it's still Alpha 6.
Yeah, it went to Dropbox. The guy who did it it works for Dropbox now. So yeah, it's interesting though.
So speaking of alphas, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say, I mean, Store is really awesome. There's a couple bugs I have open with them that they're working on. Hopefully we'll get those fixed shortly. But yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, one thing I haven't figured out with Store yet is how to do dependencies. So if I have this thing here that depends on this other store item here, we kind of go from store to store. That I haven't figured out how to do that well yet. Maybe there's a good way to do it.
It's just a flow. Flat map latest from store A to store B.
You have to show me later, Gordon, but it's one thing I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
It's a little harder going from an old app and converting it over to use Store because it's just a different flow than some of these other things. I'm in an older app right now that has a lot of tech debt, and I tried to convert some of the stuff. It was just, they're using like mediated live data and stuff. It's a little weird. But,
yeah, speaking of live datas versus flows, so one of the reasons that flat mapping like a live data a bunch of times can be bad is like you get sort of the copy each time you do that. Does flows fix that problem?
Nope.
Nope. You still get that problem. Darn it.
So when you flat map a flow, or when you take a flow and you actually make multiple maps or flat maps, things like that off of it, it creates a copy of that original flow. But Store has a great library called Multicast that handles that for you, so you don't have to do that. And then they understand this is a problem in Flow, and so they're working on a new flow called a shared flow that handles that problem. And so they're still working on getting that out, but in the meantime, you can use the multicaster from Store to cover that bug.
So is
cover
the
that
shared
issue.
flow the Kotlin coroutines thing? The native.
Yeah,
that's native?
it's a pure flow option for that. So.
So I had a question about talk about alphas and things. How many of you run on Android Studio Canary or kind of the leading edge of the IDEs? Like for your company, corporate work, production, hands still raised. That's pretty impressive.
Very.
I see
Well, he
half of
did
you
say
down,
that
but
he
I
released
see
it to
hands up.
alpha code and in his production app, so
Yeah.
it's not terribly surprising.
So I actually wrote another article on this. I can share it if you want, about using the canaries. So JetBrains has a cool tool called Toolbox. If you haven't used it, I highly, highly recommend using it.
Yep.
And basically what it does is it simplifies getting the most out of your being able to install multiple versions of Android Studio at the same time. It really simplifies that process. And the other really cool benefit they give is you're able to roll back to older versions as long as you haven't uninstalled that version of, or that type of that version of Studio, or that instance, I should say. And so, yeah, so like I said, so at the church, we use the canaries all the time. And sometimes we'll say, oh, someone will try and say, oh, Canary 10 is not stable. Stay back at Canary 8. Well, some people will try it and then they'll roll back. And the other nice thing is because of the Gradle plugin and how it's separate, as long as we don't commit that in, our build server is still fine running off of either production version or a stable Canary or beta version. And we don't have to deal with all the extra overhead of that. And so it gives a lot of benefit that way. So again, I highly recommend it. So I'm a big fan of using the canaries. There really isn't a reason not to at least try the canary or see if it gives you any benefit. And especially the best thing I found is using the canaries. Like I've logged bugs and had them fixed within the next week's release. They're really, really fast, and try to stay on top of canary bugs because generally there's something small they can fix easily, or if it's a bigger one, it'll take time, but then I actually have a back and forth with them and help develop and provide feedback and give them better insight in fixing things. So it's fixed more my way than how someone else will do it. So some big benefits of using the canaries, at least just having them installed. And Toolbox makes that super simple.
So is that Toolbox, is that something from the Android Studio developers, or is it a third party?
It's from JetBrains.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's a link to it in the article, and I'll also send it in this. I'll send the link here. Occasionally, I'll get the canary like a day or so after everyone else gets the canary. Usually, I'll get it the same day that they release it, but it's been awesome. So.
Very cool.
I don't know if any of you guys have tried this, but if you're using the canary or tried the canary inside of the previous canary, 4.1's canary, they introduced the database inspector.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple interesting things with that one. Is it will, sorry, I'm trying to think how to say this. If you use your own custom SQLite, if you bundle in a SQLite, it won't open any of those databases. But as long as you're using just the standard built-in SQLite, it opens those just fine. You can do some cool things with it. It's got some really cool back and forths that you can do. So you can make a change in the database and you'll see it live in the app, or make a change in the app and it'll show up live in the database. It goes both ways. It's really awesome. So as long as you have your own custom SQLite, it's a really great tool. Other than the fact that it does crash 29 emulators.
It crashes 29 emulators? What do you mean?
So they don't, in the Android emulator for API level 29 and 30. They don't handle.
Oh, level 29. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, they don't handle SIG, or SIG EMVs, I think, properly, and so the emulator will just crash randomly. Your app will just crash randomly just because the database inspector is open.
Do you have a ticket in for that one yet, Jordan?
Yep, that one's in there. It's actually an Android fix. They have to fix it in Android itself. So
does that mean it crashes your phone too?
It doesn't crash your phone, surprisingly. It just crashes the emulator.
That's a relief.
Unlike that special JPEG that kills people's phones, right?
Yeah, well, it's not a problem with your app. It's a problem with the database inspector and how it interacts with the app. So just because your app's crashing, it doesn't mean it's actually because you're doing something wrong. It's just because you're connected to the database inspector. But yeah, there's an open bug on that. I can send you the link as well in case you want to follow it.
Hey, how many of you do like iOS also?
I do a lot of PRs for iOS every day, but not tons of hands-on coding.
Yeah, I was wondering if anyone has had success with multi-platform, like Kotlin multi-platform in production. I know I've watched some Kotlin Conf videos, but I got the feeling that it's not quite ready.
I haven't tried it.
Yeah, I haven't delved into that yet.
So Square did a conference talk last year when they went through and talked about workflows, and for how they wrote them in Kotlin, they wrote the same library in Swift, and they actually called out trying to do multi-platform projects is a waste of time.
No.
Just in general, always.
Yep.
So I remember at Ancestry, there was a lot of time spent by Steve Burns trying to do a multi-platform data thing. He spent probably almost a year on it. Nothing.
What was that, John? He did a data.
He spent
a database.
a year trying to do some multi-platform stuff with the data, and it just ended up being a complete waste of time. I think he spent like about a year on it. It was before you guys started. Yeah, it was. Yeah, this is like a holy grail that doesn't exist, I think.
Or job security, you know.
That's true. Definitely job security. I think I've got a bit too much of that, really.
Yeah, but I mean, it could still improve. I know that's still a desire of many people to have that ability to have multi-platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest you really come these days is like referencing some JavaScript in a web view or something like that. We do that.
I mean, Xamarin does a decent job. You're able to share. I mean, you have to use their language, and it's their product all the way through. Flutter has a pretty good UI that's kind of shared. Again, you're using their language, their platform for everything, and so it works out. The tricky part, I think, for me is honestly, there's not a lot of code to actually share. You do have some good database code you can share, and if your views are going to look exactly the same on both platforms, you can share that. But I've yet to find a customer that actually wants that, other than maybe wanting an iOS app running on Android. And users don't tend to like that app at all. And so I find there's not a lot of shareable code.
So what I have found is if there's like multi-platform processing, it should be done on the server on the back end.
Agree with that.
And yeah, I'm on a project right now where a lot of it isn't. So then you end up having to do it for Apple, for Android, and for web. And one of them may not be like the others. Yeah,
I think the problem with like frameworks like Flutter is like they're always going to be behind any new exciting features that just came out, and users are going to want those new exciting features if they apply to your app. So
absolutely. because Flutter works with plugins, and if Android comes up with a new SDK or like a new feature, someone has to write a plugin for it. So as long as the community supports it, it can work out. But I think that's how it'll work out.
But how long does it take to get that plugin? And is that plugin only going to work on Android versus iOS? And I mean, there's just a lot of challenges. With
Yeah, I mean, at that point,
multi-platform.
you're basically writing custom code for Android, but in Dart.
If you write the plugin, yes. Mm-hmm.
And they picked a language that honestly is not that popular.
Yeah, I had a coworker try it out, and
Yep.
he said it was terrible.
I did hear from my friend Steven, who used to work at Instructure, that they just picked Flutter just for Android, not even for cross-platform, because they really liked it.
I can't imagine wanting to use Dart instead of Kotlin.
Apparently, it enforces some kind of like architecture, or like he likes the stateful widgets kind of architecture.
Did they look into Jetpack Compose, or was it before that was launched?
I think Compose is still not ready though, right?
Yeah, it's still pretty new. Isn't it still in like developer alpha?
Yeah.
Developer preview.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even touch that.
See, that's how we know it's new.
Oh, yeah, that's how we know. If Jordan won't touch it, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty cool how like the UI in Flutter will just update as you change the code without you having to relaunch the whole thing. But I mean, my app is pretty small. It doesn't take that long to relaunch the whole thing. So
My app is big and it doesn't take that long to relaunch the whole thing. So
there you go.
What about like build times on CI? I think the church uses Circle CI, or is that right? Or?
no, we use Jenkins.
Oh, Jenkins. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we use Jenkins too.
We use Bitrise, and I don't know if I completely like it.
Does anyone like their build tool thing? Their
I do.
I've used Jenkins and I've used Circle CI. The configuration for Circle CI was extremely complicated. A long time to write it. Yeah, how are you with Bitrise, Sushil? Good, bad?
You lose a lot of customization. So you'll have to use their steps. Even like to do Android build, it's like they have their own steps. And like if I want to optimize like the build speeds on CI, now I'll have to go and see what all tasks they're running as part of their build. Or if I want to write UI tests, like if the tests fail, it's not very intuitive, like where the test failed.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, with Circle CI, we'd always have, it eventually would take too much memory for the free tier. And so our builds would fail, and we'd like say to our boss, hey, it's like not that much money to go in and pay a little bit. He'd always insist and always take extra time himself eventually and fix the build, but the build would be broken for 2 weeks, That was kind of that just did not work well for me. One of the iOS developers ended up just paying for it with his own money for them to use Bitrise, though. But Jenkins, I mean, we used Jenkins in Ancestry for a number of years, and that worked decently well. There's pros and cons. So the problem we had was the physical devices.
Yeah.
The one had a very bloated battery. So, but,
we still have it.
Christmas timers, and there's a really great USB hub that will turn off the power. So you don't have to power the USB hub, but you can still get the data through. And we found that solves our battery problem. So we'll just basically turn the power on, charge up the devices for a couple hours, turn it off, let it run for a couple hours, turn it back on for a couple hours. And no more bloated batteries. Works pretty well.
That's pretty cool.
But I will say using the Jenkins pipelines has simplified our builds dramatically, just because we have the one Jenkins file inside the project itself managing the build. And so now I don't have to go through and manage the build server at all anymore. It's all just one file in my project.
Is that on the cloud now, or is this a local
Still local.
Okay.
But I can even move it to a cloud one if I wanted to. But I remember the days of having to go back and having to download the Android SDK and get all the other things and make sure I had the correct build tools and all the versions and maintaining that. But now that they fixed that so it downloads automatically, it's pretty nice. I don't have to deal with that
Have you
anymore.
guys had any troubles where it just like fails to download for some reason, or won't unzip, or just like race condition builds that will fail because of the Android SDK?
No.
Huh. I couldn't find anything online either, but I've got that problem and I don't know why.
Occasionally, and I mean, this is like maybe once a month, we'll just have a build fail for no reason. We kickstart the build again, and it'll go through just fine. But that's like occasionally have that problem.
Yeah, this is more often than that. It's annoying.
Can I ask another question? This is about ProGuard. What are your experiences like? Do you like enable it in debug and disable it in release, or is that a bad idea? Potentially, I think it could be. But what have your experiences been using ProGuard? Do you think it's worth the time you spend debugging the runtime exceptions? Or
I honestly don't know. I haven't used ProGuard in like 7 years.
yeah,
I use ProGuard.
yeah.
I think you could basically have to if you're using Scala.
Oh,
So, because of the Scala library size. But, I mean, we haven't really had troubles with it, but we don't have like all of the optimizations turned on and everything. So,
honestly, I've faced so many troubles. I see runtime exceptions out of nowhere. Every single time, I have to just go and like debug the issue and then add it to this ProGuard rules file. It's really just like to shrink your APK size, which we got the most benefit just from using app bundles. ProGuard probably will give you like just maybe like a few megabytes, but are there any other benefits? Will your app run faster or something like that by using ProGuard? Does anyone know?
Technically, you can speed up your start time using ProGuard, just because it can shrink the size of your app, so it decreases the number of DEX files, or I can't remember what they're called. I think they're DEX files that you have to load into memory. There's also security. If someone gets hold of your APK and they want to reverse engineer it, you can use the obfuscation for that.
that just makes everything harder to debug, though.
Yep. So I don't know. I want to use it. I just need to take the time to.
But ProGuard isn't what you're supposed to actually use these days. It's supposed to be like R8 or something,
R8.
right?
Yep. Just minify enabled. You just set it to true. Yep.
Is that what you're really using?
Yeah.
So I am really using ProGuard because last time I tried turning on R8, nothing worked. So
yeah. UI tests fail out of nowhere sometimes.
So I'm kind of wondering if it's not so much ProGuard as this new R8 thing that's not quite working.
Maybe.
Because they said it that the same files would work across, but that was obviously not true. But they did have some documentation I was looking at on like things you could do as you're migrating. But yeah, it was this thing. But I haven't had time to really figure out how to properly migrate over yet.
All right. Well, I think we've had some good discussion about Android 11 and other things, so this is good. I was good to see people again, like to feel like we had a little bit of a group here instead of one person presenting, and so it was
Yeah,
nice.
this format.
Yeah, it's more of a meetup if we can talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a small enough group that you can actually give everyone mic permissions and it doesn't go crazy.
Right.
Not like what happened to one of the governor candidates. You guys here got Zoom bombed. Yeah, Amy Woodard didn't someone put up a bunch of porn on his Zoom. She didn't set it up right, so people had presentation permissions.
In addition to microphone functions.
Yeah.
So.
And then Zoom got blamed because of how he didn't set it up right. So
yeah,
that doesn't seem quite fair. But I guess that's bad defaults for you.
I really like that we can just attend the meetup from our homes.
Yeah, less travel time.
I know, Jordan. Did you have like like some kind of a conflict with your daughter's? What was it? I can't remember what it was exactly. Sometimes you weren't able to make it for that reason.
Yep. Scheduling conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those have kind of gone away a bit in the.
Yeah, a lot less to do nowadays.
Though I do miss the pizza.
Oh, sorry, what?
I do
you
miss
missed
the pizza.
The free pizza.
Yes, yes. Well, we get pizza at our house but we have to pay for it. We still do pizza though, to honor the tradition.
Awesome.
But we appreciate you guys coming, and it was good to have some good discussion and to have this kind of meetup again. So if you want to present on something in the future, it doesn't have to be with Android 11, anything, let Michael Stringham, Mitchell Giles, or me know, and we'll you can let us know through Slack or on the meetup page. But we're always looking for people to present.
I think the discussion component is also good to have, even if there's a presentation. I think it's good to have a discussion maybe afterwards or during. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Would Store be one that people want to know more about?
I'd be interested.
I do. Yeah. Yeah, that's one that I'd like to see.
Because that came up, and it sounded like people wanted to know more about it. So I mean, either Jordan or I could do it.
On what? Sorry, what was the subject?
Store.
Oh, Store. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That'd be great.
Go
Okay, maybe we should like ask people what they're interested in hearing in that Slack channel.
Yeah.
And if someone can present, maybe we'll see more attendance if we're looking for more attendance. But if we want small groups, then maybe we should.
Either one.
Are you talking about the Utah Android group Slack? Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are you on there, Trudy?
I think I am, yeah.
Okay. So, all right.
I gotta go.
Okay.
Yep, I do too.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and thank you for participating. And it was good to see everybody. So,
Thanks, Jennifer, for doing your presentation too.
Thanks. It's a lot harder when you can't see everybody. So
guess we should have left our cameras on. Sorry.
Well, I was looking at the presentation anyway, but I mean, like it's different when you're not in the room and you can't like see and feel the energy, and you're just like, am I talking to myself?
Well, you can't walk around either.
So anyway, but we'll see you guys next month. We'll post it in the meetup and in the Slack too. So
all right.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Thanks,